I told myself I wouldn't go near her again. Not after what happened last time, the silence, the way she'd looked at me like I'd crossed a line she couldn't name. But then she looked up. Just once. And that was enough to undo everything I'd promised myself. The afternoon light spilled through her kitchen window, soft and amber, painting her in that quiet kind of glow that makes you forget where you are. She stood by the counter, sleeves rolled to her elbows, her hair tied carelessly like she'd given up trying to impress anyone years ago, and somehow that made her impossible not to watch. She didn't see me right away. I was supposed to be fixing the old shelves she'd said were loose, something about a favor she didn't really owe me. But when she turned, eyes catching mine, steady, unreadable, it wasn't a favor anymore. It was something else entirely. "Did you need another screw?" she asked, voice calm, even. Yeah. Maybe. My hand tightened around the screwdriver, though I wasn't sure what I was fixing anymore. She crossed the room slowly, barefoot on the wooden floor, the sound barely there. The air shifted, not in a dramatic way, but like the space between us had quietly decided to listen. She placed the screw in my palm, her fingers brushing my skin, a light, accidental touch that lingered half a second too long. That was all it took. Every rule I'd written in my head, about respect, about distance, about not wanting what I shouldn't, started to blur. She noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes flickered, not away, but deeper, as if she'd felt that same current and didn't know what to do with it either. Then she stepped back, just a little. Enough to make it clear that she still had control. "You shouldn't work with bare hands," she said softly. "I'm fine," I answered. "It's just wood." "Wood splinters," she replied. "So does silence," I said before I could stop myself. That made her pause. Something flickered behind her calm, a small crack in her practiced distance. She didn't smile, didn't look away. Just stood there, watching me, her breath slowing, like she was waiting for me to say something else I shouldn't. Outside, a car passed, the sound fading into the background. Inside, it was just us, the faint smell of coffee gone cold, dust floating in the sunlight, her shadow moving over the wall as she turned slightly toward me. "I thought you weren't coming back," she said finally. "I wasn't going to," I admitted. Her eyes softened, but not kindly, more like she understood too well what that meant. "You should have stayed away." "I tried," I whispered. For a moment, neither of us moved. The space between us felt thinner than air, like if I reached out, even slightly, the whole thing would collapse. She took a slow breath, her fingers brushing the edge of the counter, grounding herself. Then, as if to remind both of us where we stood, she said, "You should finish your work." But her voice, it didn't sound steady anymore. It cracked, just once, like the words heard on their way out. I nodded, trying to look busy, pretending not to notice the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for her mug. The warmth was gone from the coffee. From the room, too. And just when I thought the moment had passed, that we'd silently agreed to bury it again. The door creaked open behind us. She froze. I turned. And everything we'd tried not to name hung in the air between us, waiting to be seen. The sound of the door still echoed in my head long after it shut again. It had only been the wind, just a draft through the hallway, but for a second, both of us had turned like we'd been caught doing something we weren't supposed to. She laughed first, a quiet, nervous sound that didn't fit her usual composure. "You'd think I'd be used to this old house by now," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I forced a smile. "Guess it keeps you company." "Company," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "That's one way to call it." There was something about the way she said it, light, but not quite. Like she was talking to herself more than to me. She went back to the counter, collecting the loose papers I hadn't noticed before. A stack of unopened envelopes, a photo half hidden underneath. I caught a glimpse of it before she turned it over. Her, standing beside a man I didn't know, both smiling stiffly for the camera. She saw me looking and, without a word, pushed the photo aside. He's been gone a long time, she said quietly. Moved on. I guess that's what people do. I nodded, unsure if I was supposed to answer. You didn't? I stayed. She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. Someone had to keep the house standing. Her voice was calm, but her hands betrayed her, fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the table, like she needed to hold onto something solid. I wanted to say something, anything, to cut through that silence. But all that came out was, "You've done a good job." She turned then, really looked at me. "You don't have to be kind, you know." "I'm not," I said. "I mean it." Her gaze lingered, too long to be polite, too heavy to be casual. And then, as if she'd just realized how close we were standing, she took a small step back, brushing past me in the narrow space. Her shoulder brushed my arm, a simple touch, accidental, but it sent something sharp and electric through me. She stopped near the window, the light cutting across her face. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she murmured. "How am I looking?" "Like you're trying not to." That silenced me. The air felt heavier, the kind of quiet that holds its breath before breaking. She sighed, not quite turning around. "You're young. You'll figure out how to look at people your own age soon enough." I wanted to laugh, to tell her that age wasn't what I saw, that it wasn't about that. But the words caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. Instead, I said, "Maybe. But right now, it's just you." Her hand froze on the curtain. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she let out a breath, a shaky one this time, and turned halfway toward me, eyes softer now, no defense left. "You should stop saying things like that," she whispered. "I've tried." She smiled, small, reluctant, but real. Then she reached out, her fingers brushing mine for just a heartbeat, enough to make everything else fade away. The touch was nothing and everything at once, a quiet agreement neither of us could speak. And in that fragile second before she pulled her hand back, I realized I'd already broken every rule that mattered. The rain had started without warning, a steady rhythm against the windows, soft but insistent. I stayed longer than I should have, pretending to finish tightening bolts that were already secure. She didn't tell me to leave. She didn't tell me to stay, either. The house felt smaller somehow, quieter. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the faint creak of the floorboards, filled the space between us. She was sitting at the table now, reading something on her phone. Or pretending to. Her glasses rested low on her nose, a strand of hair falling forward as she frowned slightly, lost in thought. I was supposed to be packing up my tools, but instead, I found myself watching her. The light caught the edge of her jaw, the small pulse in her throat. She must have felt it, my gaze, the unspoken pull, because she looked up suddenly. "What?" she asked, almost a whisper. "Nothing. You're staring." I tried to smile. "You noticed." She set the phone down slowly, folding her arms, but her tone softened. "You shouldn't." "I can't help it." She gave a quiet, tired laugh, not amused, not dismissive, just human. That's what everyone says before they ruin something. I wanted to answer, to tell her I didn't want to ruin anything, but the sound of the doorbell cut through the moment, sharp and jarring. She froze. The spell shattered instantly. Her eyes widened, and before I could say a word, she stood, smoothing her shirt, checking her reflection in the window pane. "Stay here," she murmured quickly, her voice suddenly all edges. "Don't say anything." I did as she said, heart pounding as she opened the front door. "Hi," a man's voice greeted. Older, familiar. "Just wanted to drop this off. You left it at the community center." "Oh," she said, her voice carefully even. Thanks, Paul. That's kind of you. I couldn't see him, but I could hear the friendliness in his tone, the kind that lingered just long enough to make me uneasy. He asked something I couldn't make out, and she answered too quickly, too practiced, just doing some repairs. My neighbor's son is helping. Neighbor's son. It shouldn't have stung, but it did. She closed the door gently after he left, exhaling only when the sound of his car faded away. When she turned back, her shoulders slumped, not from guilt, but from the exhaustion of having to explain something that wasn't even wrong yet. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He tends to notice things. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. You don't owe me an explanation. She looked at me then, something fragile flickering across her face. I think I do. The rain grew heavier outside, streaking down the glass in long, uneven trails. She stepped closer, maybe to say something else, maybe just because the silence demanded it. Her hand brushed mine again, this time not by accident. People talk, she whispered. They always have. Let them, I said. They don't know us. Her breath caught, so close now that I could feel the warmth of it against my skin. Her fingers trembled slightly, caught between pulling away and holding on. Don't, she murmured, but she didn't move. I'm not doing anything. That's the problem, she said, her voice breaking on the last word. The world narrowed to the space between us, the smell of rain, the sound of her heartbeat, the distance we both pretended still existed. For a moment, everything else, the rules, the hesitation, the outside world, vanished. Then, in a voice barely audible, she said, You should go. I didn't move. Neither did she. And somehow, that stillness felt closer than any touch we'd ever shared. 3 days passed before I saw her again. 3 days of rain, of half-written texts I never sent, of thinking about that last look she'd given me when she said, You should go. But she hadn't told me not to come back. When I finally did, the storm had passed, leaving the air thick and quiet, the kind of quiet that carries its own heartbeat. Her house smelled faintly of citrus and paint. She'd been redoing the living room, though it looked more like she'd just been trying to keep her hands busy. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just tired. I thought you might have listened this time, she said, leaning against the doorframe. I did, I replied softly. Didn't help. That earned the faintest twitch of a smile, the kind she hid when she didn't want to admit she understood. I stepped inside before she could decide whether to stop me. The tension was different now, not sharp, not new. Familiar. Like something we'd both been pretending to unlearn. She crossed her arms, watching me carefully. You shouldn't keep coming here. Then tell me to stop. She opened her mouth but didn't say it. The silence stretched, heavy and alive. I don't know what you think this is, she murmured finally, her voice softer now, the edge gone. I don't know either, I admitted. But I know how it feels when you look at me. That broke her stillness. She turned away, pretending to tidy the table, a useless movement. You're too young to say things like that. You keep saying that like it makes you older, I said. She froze. Her hand on the table tightened just slightly. It does. Then why do you sound like you're trying to convince yourself? The words landed harder than I expected. She turned then, and for the first time, there was no pretense in her face, just raw, unguarded confusion. Regret. Want. I can't, she began, but her voice faltered. People would talk. They'd call it wrong. They'd say you don't know what you want. I do, I said quietly. And it's standing right in front of me. The air changed, denser, charged. She took a slow breath, and when she stepped toward me, I swear the floor creaked like it knew what was about to happen. She reached up, tentative, trembling, and brushed her fingers through my hair, pushing a damp strand back from my forehead. The touch was small, ordinary. But it undid me. Her hand lingered near my temple, then drifted down, grazing my jaw, the side of my neck. Her pulse was fast. So was mine. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "I don't care." Her lips parted, just slightly, as if to speak, but nothing came. I could feel the warmth of her breath, the faint scent of coffee and rain and something faintly floral. Her eyes lifted to mine. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she leaned in, close enough that I could almost taste the words she wasn't saying. And just as the world narrowed to that single, breathless inch between us, a phone rang. The sound tore through the air like a warning bell. She flinched, stepping back fast, her hand falling away. Neither of us moved for a moment, the sound echoing between us. She glanced at the phone on the counter, then at me. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. "You should answer that," she said. "It's yours," I whispered. Her eyes darkened, not with anger, but with the weight of everything we couldn't yet admit. The phone kept ringing. Neither of us moved, the ringing stopped, but the silence it left behind was worse. She stared at the phone for a long second, chest rising and falling too fast, then turned away, toward the counter, toward anything that wasn't me. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "That was my daughter." I blinked. "I didn't know you had." "She's 23. She said it quickly, almost sharply, before I could ask more. Then, quieter, "She used to come by on weekends. Before everything changed." She picked up the phone, checked the screen, then set it down again. Her fingers lingered there, trembling slightly. "She's in town. Wants to stop by tonight." "Oh?" I wasn't sure what to say. The distance between us suddenly felt enormous, filled with every reason we shouldn't be standing this close. Her laugh was small, unsteady. "See? That's why this can't happen. You're her age. You're—" "Don't," I interrupted softly. "Don't make it sound smaller than it is." She looked up, startled by the edge in my voice. "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" She hesitated. The rain had started again, tapping against the windows like it wanted in. "I'm trying to protect something," she said finally. "Me?" "No," she whispered. "Myself." The words hit harder than I expected. I took a slow step closer, and she didn't move, didn't stop me, didn't breathe. "You keep saying this is wrong," I said quietly, "but you're the only one here who looks like they're breaking." Her lips parted. For a second, I thought she might deny it, but instead, she let out a shaky breath, and something in her face cracked open. "You don't understand," she said. "I already did this once. Fell for someone who swore they wouldn't hurt me. I believed him. And when he left, he took more than I thought I could lose." She turned her head slightly, eyes wet, jaw tight. "I can't do that again. Especially not with you." "Why not me?" I asked. "Because you'd stay." The confession slipped out before she could catch it, quiet, frightened, true. Neither of us moved. My pulse thudded in my ears. She realized what she'd said too late. Her hand flew to her mouth, but her eyes were wide, desperate, like she wished she could pull the words back. I took another step forward. Her back hit the counter behind her. My hand brushed against hers, light, deliberate. "Say that again," I whispered. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." Her breath hitched, the sound breaking between us. "You don't know what you're asking for." "I do," I said. "You?" Her eyes closed, just for a heartbeat, long enough for me to see every wall she'd built start to shake. Then she opened them again, and something changed. The fear didn't leave her face, but she didn't look away anymore. "Then don't come back after tonight," she said, voice trembling. I stared at her, not sure if she was daring me or begging me to listen. Either way, I knew I wouldn't. Because for the first time, she wasn't pretending anymore. The house was dim except for the flicker of the rain-soaked streetlight outside. She'd turned off most of the lamps, maybe to make it easier to pretend this wasn't happening. Maybe to make it easier to forget. I hadn't left. I couldn't. She stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, watching the reflection of headlights glide across the glass. Her voice came without turning around. You shouldn't still be here. I know. Then why are you? Because you told me not to come back, I said. And I'm terrible at goodbyes. That made her exhale, not quite a laugh, but something close. She turned then, slowly, the dim light catching the outline of her face. You think this is something you can just insist on? No, I said, stepping closer. I think it's something we've both been trying not to name. Her eyes flickered, searching mine, waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. She took a step back, but the counter stopped her retreat. My hand brushed the edge beside her, close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off her skin. This doesn't fix anything, she said. Her voice was calm, but the way her throat moved when she swallowed betrayed her. I'm not trying to fix it, I said quietly. I just want to stop pretending it isn't real. She shook her head, but she didn't step away. The distance between us was nothing now, just a breath, a thought. I could feel the air shift when she spoke again. You don't understand what you're risking. Then explain it to me. Her hand lifted, not to push me away, but to rest against my chest, as if testing whether my heart was really beating as fast as hers. Her fingers trembled. Mine closed over them, gently. She looked up at me then, not guarded, not careful, just seen. This is the part where I should stop you, she whispered. I'll stop if you tell me to. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was decision. The kind made with the whole body before the mind can interfere. She didn't tell me to stop. Instead, she leaned in, not a kiss, not yet, just her forehead resting against mine. Her breath mingled with mine, warm and uneven. I felt her fingers clutch at my shirt, then release, as if fighting herself. I don't want to be someone's mistake again, she said softly. Then don't be, I whispered. Be the reason. Her eyes opened, meeting mine, and whatever distance had existed between us vanished. The moment stretched, fragile, inevitable. I could taste the answer in the air before she even spoke. This changes everything, she breathed. I know. Her hand moved to the back of my neck, her thumb brushing the edge of my jaw, and finally, the world fell quiet. No more rain, no more rules, no more trying to stay away. Just the truth, that neither of us could walk back from this now. And for the first time, neither of us wanted to. The morning light slipped through the curtains, pale and soft, finding its way across the room, over the uneven stack of books, the half-drunk cup of coffee, and the space where two people had stopped pretending. She was already awake, sitting by the window with her knees pulled close, the blanket draped loosely around her shoulders. The world outside was still wet, quiet after the storm. She didn't look at me right away. For a moment, I thought she might regret it, the way people do when reality returns too soon. But then she turned her head, just slightly, and the small smile that followed wasn't guilt. It was peace. You stayed, she said softly. I told you I would. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching. You don't have to make promises you'll regret. I sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. That's the first one I don't think I will. She exhaled, a long, trembling breath, half relief, half disbelief. You make it sound simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, I said. We just made it that way. She laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep, not joy exactly, but release. Her hand reached for mine, tentative at first, then firmer. Her fingers were warm, soft, grounding. I don't know what happens now, she admitted. People will talk. They'll look at me differently. Let them, I said, echoing my words from days ago. They don't know how this feels. Her eyes softened. And how does it feel? I hesitated, then smiled a little. Like I finally stopped standing outside my own life. She looked at me for a long moment, then leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. The smell of her hair, the warmth of her skin, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, it all felt impossibly real. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You know this doesn't erase the years between us. I don't want to erase them, I said. They are part of what makes you, you. That broke her. The tears came without warning, not from sadness, but from the release of everything she'd been holding in. I didn't speak. I just pulled her closer, feeling her shoulders tremble against me until they finally stilled. We stayed that way for a long time, wrapped in silence, in the warmth of something that had finally stopped being forbidden. There were no more words left to hide behind. Just the slow, steady realization that somehow, against every rule and reason, we'd found each other exactly where we weren't supposed to. When she finally looked up again, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. You really shouldn't have come back, she whispered. I know, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I'm glad I did. And this time, when she leaned in, it wasn't a question. It was an answer. Outside, the sun broke through the last of the rain clouds. Inside, everything finally felt still. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?